In today's video, I'd like to share some reflections on how I've reinvented myself over the years, and maybe something in there can help you do the same. And also, how life has a tendency of helping us along sometimes. Now, for context, I've recently returned to the UK after 6 weeks in Thailand, or thereabouts. And I flew out there with very short notice because my father lived out there and he got sick and ended up in hospital, and sadly he passed away a week yesterday being Monday, the 2nd of June, I think. So I'm not long back in the UK, and I've given myself a couple of days to just have some space and do the things that one needs to do after they've been away for a while. And as you can probably tell from my voice, I've also picked up a cold. So even though being out in the rain doesn't necessarily make sense, I have missed it. And there's been lots of time where I've just been in that constant 30-degree heat, struggling at times to breathe. And so coming back to typical English weather actually gives me a lot to be thankful for. So I'm making the most of it. And I found myself over the years many times feeling a bit like one of those little hermit crabs in a shell. It's outgrown its shell, but it doesn't necessarily have another one to move into yet. And so I've been observing more recently how that process has unfolded. And for me, it's like getting to a point in life where you feel like who you are or who you're showing up as just doesn't reflect the deepest truth that you know. It doesn't reflect perhaps the depths of your character or the things that you really care about. Perhaps you wake up sometimes and you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, who is this person? This isn't me. This isn't who I want to be right now. But you don't necessarily have a new form to step into. And then on the other hand, you have the challenge of prevailing wisdom, which says it's impossible for us to change, that our personalities are fixed, and that the best we can do is to find ways to cope or manage with the tendencies that we have or have been given, however you subscribe to it. And I think those two things kind of contradict each other, really, because if it was true that we could never change, then why would so many of us go through phases of listening to particular types of music when we're in school or college or university, and then getting to a point in our 20s or 30s where we turn around and go, God, that was rubbish, wasn't it? Why did we listen to that? Or we do certain things like we go out partying every day, or we spend money on things that we think are important to us, or spend time around people that we have things in common with, and all of a sudden we get to a point in our lives where those things change. And so if it was really true that we couldn't go through that process of change, then I would say none of those things would happen. And of course, we all experience it in degrees. But really it's indicative of the fact that life is constantly moving through us, and it's encouraging us to let go of old habits and patterns and ways of being, and to shed our skin, metaphorically, so that we can become something else. And as I've explained in a couple of other videos, like change happens under two conditions. It's either elective, so we choose to change, or it's enforced upon us, so we have no choice. Now, I would say the situation I've just found myself in for the last 6 weeks was a mixture of both, because I chose to go out there However, at the same time, when I found myself out there, I had to adapt to some very significant differences in the way that the culture and the climate and transportation and buying things, you have to get used to all of that stuff. And so that's a consequence of making a choice. But because of that, I got to experience perspectives that otherwise I wouldn't have seen or had. I got to see things happening that I probably would have hidden from or avoided. I got to discover parts of myself that I'd either forgotten existed or didn't know existed. Parts of myself that could be with someone in their final moments, parts of myself that could help someone so close to me in ways that I wouldn't have expected. And for any of you that have been with someone who's very, very sick or who is terminally ill, then you'll know that the body of someone who's in that position can't do much for itself, and so you have to help it along in other certain ways, and you have to take care of it, and you have to, essentially it's a bit like having a child, I think, in some ways, because that person is entirely dependent on you. And so in the absence of dealing with it, what do you do? And so in situations like that, it really does put you into an unknown space. And I'm incredibly grateful for having been through that experience. And of course, when there's emotion which arises, it will be felt. But I return home with a huge amount of gratitude and an enormous amount of new perspective. But I also return home with a very key reflection, which is that the life I've been living, in many ways, hasn't been wholly aligned with who I take myself to be at the deepest level. And at one level, that is a reflection of my relationship with whatever you want to call the universe or the infinite spirit or God, or whichever word resonates for you. But also it's my relationship with my ability to change and express myself as I so please. And upon reflection, lots of reflection, as I've had an enormous amount of time recently, I have come to the realization that life is refining me. Life is my teacher, and it's inviting me to shed old ways of being, patterns, habits, forms of expression, which haven't served me for a very long time, yet they have some degree of familiarity, and so I hold on to them, because in the absence of being in a situation which I'm comfortable with, or being around people I know, I can rely on those things. They're like safety nets, if you like. Same way that some of us, I feel, go to food when we're uncomfortable, or we pick up our phones, or in the old days we'd reach for a cigarette or a vape or whatever. And this process of refining isn't necessarily always a comfortable one. And certainly for me it hasn't been, because most of it's happened against my, what I would say at the time is against my will, let's say, but a deeper part of me obviously knows that that's what's meant for me. But to allow yourself to be changed when it's occurring to you that it's time to change, it's incredibly liberating. It can be scary at times, of course, because you don't know what you're changing into, and you have to let go of something before you necessarily fully have a grasp on something else. And there is a period of discovery, and of course there'll be decisions you make that you may not want to stick with. In my experience, clothes I have bought that I don't want to wear, or choices I have made that don't seem to be sustainable, but that's a part of the process. And this process of being refined is like, if I can put put this into perspective more so with my own life, if it helps, is I was brought up in a two-parent household that became a one-parent household just after I hit my double-digit years. And so much of my teens and my youth was spent between two places. And so I formed views of how relationships are based on the experiences that my parents had with each other and the stories that you get told and the things that are reinforced by society when this kind of situation occurs. And also I come from how I would describe as a working class family, and if any of my family are listening, hopefully you don't take that as an insult, because it's not meant that way, but just simply people who go out and work hard for a living and make ends meet, but not much more. And I've come to realize through the work I've done on myself and the questions I've asked of myself and others that that's just a way to live. It's not the way necessarily, and it works for many of us. And I'm sure there are many of you watching this who may be in that situation now, where you are in a working class family, or you're from a working class family. Maybe you're not, it doesn't really matter. The point I'm trying to illustrate is change comes when we follow that sense inside of us that says there might be something in this for me. And I'm not necessarily right now going to jump in with both feet, but I'm going to have a look. I'll see how it feels. I'm going to try this garment of life on, see how it feels, and if it feels good, if it feels right for me, then I'll keep it, and if it doesn't, then I'll let it go. And Bruce Lee said something similar. He said, take what works and discard the rest. And I'd like you to take anything that you hear in my videos, or anyone else's videos for that matter, or any conversation you have, take what works for you. If it doesn't work for you, don't hold on to it. It's just going to weigh you down. This is why advice is really, really ineffective most of the time, because it's being shared from someone's perspective of, well, it worked for me, therefore it should work for you. And life doesn't work that way. It's not one size fits all. And I'm still walking the path myself. But the realization I've arrived at since I've been home, since I've not really been able to go out a huge amount over the last couple of days because I haven't been feeling that well, is, well, I have an invitation to refine myself even more. And this channel is my way of documenting that process. And so I would like to think that for those of you who are at the beginning stages of that, who have a sense that maybe the life that you're living isn't right for you, there's an invitation for you to change in some way, but you're not sure where or how to lean into that, then follow accounts like these where you have the opportunity to see someone else doing it in real time. And I feel that's the value of all of the work I can share, is just to give you a sense of permission that actually the things that you want are available to you. And they may not come in the ways that you expect or in the ways that the world tells you they will. But that doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. And most of my life has not unfolded the way that I would have chosen for it to. Had I known beforehand that's how it would be. But in a way that's a part of the joy, because it gives me a reason to keep my mind open and to see the new things without the expectation or judgment they should be a different way, or they shouldn't be happening at all. And I have experienced lots of that. So if you're on the cusp of change, if you feel called to change in some way, then consider that maybe life is just inviting you to refine yourself. And maybe that does mean leaving things behind that you have some attachment to, but perhaps when you leave them behind, it gives you a space to pick something else up that's far more aligned with who you are. And in some cases, there is no need to pick up anything. You can just enjoy the space. And I really like the phrase, less is more. Less is more. You know, you can take a battery, or you can take something that has a certain amount of power loaded up inside of it, and you can disperse it in 100 ways, in very, very small fractions, or you can disperse 100% of that energy in one direction. And that, I feel, is where the value is for all of us, is to give us that sense of focus, or an invitation to focus, even if focus is something we don't do very well. And I know many of us do struggle with that. I struggle with that at times. But that's not a defect. It's just another form of invitation. So be curious to hear from you in the comments, and for the benefit of others watching this video as well, please share your stories of change, or things which have occurred to you, maybe things you've decided that have led to change, but also things that have happened to you which in hindsight have actually been blessings. And the more of us who are aware that these kinds of things are possible, the more of us can come together from a place of possibility, rather than from this place of just constantly reinforcing the viewpoints we hold which don't bring us joy. And if you like the content, please do let the YouTube machine know, because again, it goes a long way to share this channel with others who may be on a similar path. And as I've mentioned also before, I feel the more of us that can come together in that way, the more impactful we can be collectively. And this isn't about me or anybody else having all of the answers. It's just simply about us coming together with different perspectives to consider that maybe life isn't about holding one fixed perspective. It's about trying on as many as you can, seeing which ones work, letting the ones go which don't, and not being too fixed or rigid. Yeah. And anything else you'd like to let me know, then please do. I'll see you on the next one.